brand nerds, brands, beats, and bites back at you. First show in 2025, album 7, track 1. Larry, album 7, year 7? Like, what?
What? Crazy, right?
Oh, 7 years. I remember, Larry, way back, brand nerds, when websites were first coming into vogue. And after a while, when it first came out, if someone had a website, I was like, Larry, wow, this company has a website. They must be really, they're like really legit. And then a few years later, it's like every damn body had a website. It's like,
That's right.
website. Same thing with podcasts now.
Right.
Like we started our podcast 7 years ago, felt like really special and new. And now everybody's got a podcast. Brand nerds, we still love our podcast, and we are quite happy that you continue to support us. So, LT, we have a guest today with as said, spoken by Liam Neeson on the movie that I really love all of these movies, but Taken, the franchise, the first one. He's talking to the kidnappers of his daughter. Y'all, brand nerds, for you all who have not seen this movie, you have to check this movie Taken out. And so he's talking to one of the captors of his daughter, and they're kind of dismissing him on the phone. And Liam Neeson says, "I have a particular set of skills." Okay, basically saying to them, "I'm gonna find your ass. Okay, I'm gonna hunt you down." Today, brand nerds, we have a guest with a particular set of skills, and I'm going to describe the skill now. And not all marketers have this skill. The skill is this, brand nerds: the ability to market something that is a want so well that consumers view it as a need.
Ooh.
That's the unique skill set of our guest today. So, brand nerds, I think Procter & Gamble is one of the greatest companies that has ever been created. And their brand management training stands as some of the best in the world. But here's the deal. You need to wash your clothes. Yeah, you do need to wash your clothes.
I hope so.
I hope so. Yep. You need to brush your teeth.
Yep.
You need to brush your teeth. You need to shave. You need to shave.
You don't need to shave, but
well, I think I'm getting to a point, LT, where I do maybe need to trim up a bit. But these are things that in the modern world one needs to do. You never need to drink a Coca-Cola. You don't need to drink a Coca-Cola. You want to drink a Coca-Cola. You desire to drink a Coca-Cola. You relish drinking a Coca-Cola. And part of that is about the product and the many products in the non-alcoholic beverage space. But much of that is about the marketing and mastery of that marketing. And with that today, who do we have in the building with us, LT?
Ooh, that's a great setup, B. Great setup for the first show of the year. DC, we have Shakir Moin in the house today. Welcome, Shakir.
Thank you so much. And Darren, what an amazing introduction. I'm going to play that to my kids.
We're not even close to done yet, Shakir. DC did a great preamble. We're not even close to done. So you're going to have to sit back and relish what's coming, okay? So, okay, brand nerds, as DC said, our guest Shakir has quite a lot to do with Coca-Cola Company marketing, since Shakir is currently the president of marketing for Coca-Cola North America. In this role, he oversees marketing for the entire portfolio of the Coca-Cola Company brands in North America. But let's walk you through Shakir's unique path to earning this major role. So, okay, beginning in his native Pakistan, Shakir earns an MBA from Institute of Business Administration, and then he embarks upon his marketing career, first as a brand manager with Gillette. And after 4 years there, he joins Coca-Cola, which is the start of his very successful 28 years and counting with the company. Shakir's first job with Coke is a brand manager role in Pakistan, and he then earns his first promotion to be a group brand manager in Malaysia. Shakir steadily rises through the ranks as a marketing director in different countries throughout the Pacific Rim, such as Malaysia, Singapore, and the Philippines, which is wrapped around the general manager assignment in Singapore, Malaysia, Brunei. Clearly, Shakir is making an impact. He is then promoted to be marketing director for all of Southeast Asia. Okay, so 2 years later in 2013, Shakir is tapped to become the VP CMO for Coca-Cola Greater China and Korea, which encompasses China, Korea, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Mongolia. It's the third biggest operation for the Coca-Cola company in the world, with revenues of more than $9 billion. And that's where he leads marketing strategy, innovation, and execution for Coca-Cola China. And he has a team of 100 plus marketers across brand management, content, design, innovation, e-commerce, digital, social, etc. Okay, so after 4 really successful years in this position, the folks in headquarters on North Avenue notice, and they have Shakir move to Atlanta, becoming VP of Global Strategic Initiatives. And after less than a year, he quickly gains more responsibility, becoming VP and Chief of Staff for Global Growth Function, where he's responsible for growth operations and leading global strategy, global marketing charters, innovation strategy and pipeline development, growth capability development, and strategic communications. All right. So after 2 great years in global growth, Shakir is tapped on the shoulder to become the COO of Costa Coffee, a brand now that is wholly owned by Coca-Cola. In 2023, after great success at Costa Coffee, including spending the last 8 months as their interim CEO, Coca-Cola then asked Shakir to move into his current role, President of Marketing at Coca-Cola North America. While that is Shakir's wondrous path, here are some other items we think you will find interesting. Shakir always has the ethos that, quote, great people build great brands, and he bakes this into all that he does professionally. In Shakir's 28 years at the Coca-Cola Company, he has lived in 11 countries and has won the Coca-Cola Marketing Excellence Award twice. In 2010, CMO Asia recognizes Shakir with the Asian Super Achiever Award. In 2013, Shakir has the rare experience of developing and executing a launch campaign for Coca-Cola in a totally new Coca-Cola market, Myanmar, which is really a very unique experience. In 2023, Shakir is selected by Campaign USA for its annual CMO 50 list, recognizing the most intrepid and culture-making brand marketers. And also in 2023, Shakir is selected as one of the 50 most outstanding Asians in America by the Asian American Development Center. In closing, Shakir currently resides in Atlanta with his wife, Sana, and children, Mariam and Danielle. Really looking forward to this one. Welcome to Brands, Beats, and Bites, Shakir Moin.
Thank you, Larry. Now I'm blushing, and the only visual I had was I wish my mother was alive to listen to this. She would have been somewhat proud.
Somewhere she's hearing it, Shakir.
Fingers crossed.
Yes.
Indeed, indeed she is. We really like watching the faces of our guests, Shakir, as Larry goes through their accomplishments. In some ways, with our guest, it's as if they're listening to it, not from the perspective of someone who's actually done it, but of themselves as a viewer. It's like, it's akin to an out-of-body experience. And the same thing happened here. As you were listening to it, I could see you go, okay.
That too. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Your flowers, brother. You've earned this. Larry just states the facts. He just states the facts.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Shakir. We are on to the Get Comfy section. As you know, Shakir, both Larry and I are Coca-Cola alums. Yep. When I was there, I had one of my roles was in the global group. So I traveled all over the world. And it was one of the most eye-opening experiences of my entire life. You have lived in 11 countries, not visited 11 countries, lived in 11 countries. And you know this very well, Shakir. Marketing is about human behavior. And oftentimes it's about psychology, really understanding the mind of a consumer. Given your global experience, please share with the brand nerds, what have you found to be a commonality amongst humans, no matter the country? And what are some key differences you've noticed across countries?
So, of the 11 countries that I've been been privileged to live and work with, 9 of them don't speak English. It's not their primary language. So as I move from country to country to country, US and UK are the only 2 countries where English is the number 1 language, the primary language of communication. So a critical challenge, and I remember my first move was to Sri Lanka. And the thought was, well, I don't like coming from my home country, I can look at a tagline and I can understand every single meaning underneath that. I can watch an ad and I can listen to the music and appreciate the lyrics. And I had none of that in majority of the markets where I lived in. But the superpower that I sort of discovered, not as a superpower within me, but the power of somebody new coming into the market, was because I don't know anything or I didn't knew anything. Everything is new, and I learned everything from scratch. And things that people take for granted was always new for me. And I ended up discovering a lot more just because I was wearing lenses which were new to the market than pretty much everyone else in the market. And that's a gift, I guess, for people like me who have lived and worked in different countries or try to support different markets in different ways. So to your question, living in these markets, the interesting thing, and if I were to reflect back of 30 years of doing this, is human beings are essentially the same. And my most visceral example, a mother in Sri Lanka is the same as a mother in China. It's the same as a mother in the US or in the UK or in Singapore or in Malaysia or in Hong Kong. The notion of motherhood, the fundamental DNA is the same. And that provides at least brands and the brand nerds who would want eventually to work for global brands or build businesses that are global in nature, is we often get distracted by the dissimilarities versus the similarities. And I think there's too much in common for us to not appreciate in this beautiful part of humanity, which interestingly, Daryl, then makes our job somewhat easier, because if you base yourself on understanding humanity, you can start to take those learnings out and when you go from market to market to market. Now, within that context, I'll share some examples with you as well. Whilst motherhood is the same, how the behaviors and actions are manifested are different. And that's where the differential comes in. A mother's love for a child and daughter is universal. Right. There is if there was a way to measure it, I think we'll find it in the same measurement scale. How that love is manifested is very, very different. So as we, and as I especially sort of navigated through countries, there was, and as part of a beautiful global company, constantly figuring out and navigating on, here's a global idea that can go across every market versus here's an idea that probably needs adjustment because consumers may decode this idea very differently. Versus an idea that just doesn't work because it doesn't connect with how the society has developed and progressed over time. So just to put an example in, when I was based out of China, China opened up in 1977 with Deng Xiaoping, experimenting with this idea of opening up. And then it was about 20 years of experimentation. Early 2000, China fully opened up. And as we work with our own people, the team that I was lucky and fortunate to work with, we realized that unlike most countries, it was the first and second generation of people who were actually working in companies.
Oh, interesting.
And you would take that for granted, right? And in the US, I've never bothered to even ask on, so which generation of an employee base are we sitting in?
It would be an odd question here.
It would be a hard question.
Yeah.
It's multi-generational, right? And what's the value of asking that question as well versus over there? And same thing with consumers. So consumers in a mother in China would want to understand what's inside the product. for the same love for that one child that she's so proud and protective of, versus a mother in Philippines wants to just make the family happy. Yep. So same mother, literally,
Right.
if they were sitting and breaking bread together, they would both be complaining about their children or being proud
Right.
about their children, and they would talk about their husband. But when it comes to the decision-making process, they have different sort of entry points on how they want to take care of their family. And that's because evolution of the culture, religion comes and plays a part on it,
Sure.
development of society plays a part on it. So multiple variable comes into it. And that has been fascinating for me to constantly decode, understand, and then, use to connect our brands in a more meaningful way.
That's a great that's snippet that you provided, Shakir, is awesome. And what I'm struck by, DC, is that Shakir is always listening. Because if you don't take the time to listen and sort of, you know, so think about your surroundings and listen and also watch and listen, right? Take in your surroundings. And too often us marketers always want to go and go do things. And you've got to listen first and take in everything and take in the culture and take in everything that's around you before you can make the best moves. Because those examples that you provided of the manifestation of a mother's love in two different countries that are in the Asian Rim are very different. And if you're not acculturated to what's going on, you're going to lose it.
Absolutely. And it's also right to the point on it's listening, watching, observing, because everything matters, right? And I'm going to use again the two examples of the two markets that I was part of. Philippines, majority of the population is in the C, D income group. It's still an emerging market.
Right.
China is more developed on most parts of the country. The cues of packaging, what we put on packaging, in a market which is emerging, if a beautiful package goes on the table itself, or when the guest comes in, they would serve directly from the package. In an emerged market, they would pour the same Coke, same Sprite, Daryl, the brand that you love so much,
Love
in
it.
a glass and bring it to the guests. So the behavior manifestation changes. So very acutely understanding the cues of the marketplace is critical for all of us who are in this craft of brand marketing.
Yes. We talk about this a lot, and we can't overstate it, how really observing, listening, watching before doing.
100%.
Brand nerds, we do this show because some of you all are currently brand managers. Some of you all may be close to that. Many may be higher than that. But for the brand managers specifically who are looking, aspiring to be CMOs, we do this for you, to give you jewels, to get you to the CMO level. If we ended this podcast right now, and we're not, Shakir, we're not going to end it now. But if we did end it right now, brand nerds, you got just something magical right here, right here. Shakir, when you said across the 11 countries, motherhood is the same, but how motherhood is manifested is different. That's a mic drop. That's a mic drop. And then you talked about while in one country, a mother may be most concerned about the ingredients, what's inside the product for her child, whereas in another market, I think you said the Philippines. Yep, that mother is most concerned with the happiness of the family, the child and the family. This brings me to a quote and a framework, brand nerds. Here's the quote. Humans, our species, make decisions for emotional reasons and justify with logic.
Yep.
We make decisions for emotional reasons and justify with logic. This is a fact of the human species. And so back to that motherhood example, the base emotion is love. That is the base emotion. So here's a framework, brand nerds, that I'm going to recommend you think about. What, why, how? What in this example that Brother Shakir has given us, the base emotion is love. So that's first, love. The second, why, is you have to get it. Why is that love so important? What's in that? What's in this thing, love, between mother and child? Why is that so important? And then the third is how. How is that manifested? And if you break those down across different countries, you can spring from the same base emotion of love and then start to go out from there. But you do yourself a disservice if you don't distinctly determine and identify the base emotion. That's what this brother has just taught all of us.
Yep.
But Darren, what you are teaching, I always thought you were a sage. I think you just proven is Aristotle's framework of logos, ethos, and pathos is exactly that.
Right.
Right? Logos, which is logic, is all about emotion, about logic, the justifying the why.
Yeah.
The ethos is who you are and the reason to believe. And the pathos is the emotional and connectivity. So I take your 3-dot framework and you put Aristotle on it, which is, it fits so perfectly. So I never knew Aristotle was a marketer, but I now know that DC, you are Aristotle.
Thank you, my brother.
Shaquille O'Neal calls himself the big Aristotle, and you're the normal size Aristotle.
Well, I got to be the little Aristotle, Larry. Okay, I appreciate the niceness. I'm 5'8". Okay, I'm the little Aristotle. Shakir, thank you for that compliment, brother. Thank you so much. And just as a full disclosure, brand nerds, Shakir and I have dined together before. I think he may have just had a Coke, and I think I may have had something a bit more substantial. And we just had a conversation. I'll never forget this. We were at the Four Seasons at Bar Margo, and we must have talked, Shakir, hour and a half or so. And it was one of the most wonderful conversations. We just talked about marketing and how humans do what they do and that kind of thing. I looked up and I was like, all this time has passed. So, brand nerds, we're just getting started. And with that, we are going to the next section. And we call that next section, Shakir, 5 questions. I ask you a question, Larry asks you a question. We go back and forth until we arrive at 5, and I get to kick this off. Take yourself back, Shakir, to a time where you experienced a brand, and as you experienced it, speaking of time passing without noticing, you were so into this brand, Shakir, you thought you were maybe engaged with it for 10 minutes. It's like it was 40 minutes has gone by. You could not get it off of your mind. You did not want to get this brand off of your mind. You wanted it to occupy this gray matter, the frontal lobe, and then the synapses firing. Almost like a first love, like you were getting some dopamine from this brand for you. What was that first brand experience for you?
DC, sometimes, when this question is asked, it's asked in like, what is the first brand memory you create on the brand? And my answer on that is very different. The question you're asking is so deep, and my answer is very different on it as well. Literally, that thing that occupied my mind, I could not stop thinking about it then for months, for years, and for decades.
Oh, wow.
1977, Star Wars in the cinema.
Yes.
I was a kid. One of my uncles was visiting from London. And he said, well, this movie's coming out, the great reviews, do you want to come and watch? And I was growing up in Pakistan. There weren't a whole lot of cinemas over there, and they would barely have English movies at that time. So they took me and my brother for a treat. And I was blown away by Star Wars and the idea of Star Wars. And exactly what he said, that the synapses in my brain were firing, the lightsaber is like, oh my goodness, what is this thing? And I'm still in love with R2D2. In my office at home, I have a mini R2D2, and that love started in 1977 and hasn't stopped. Like, I've watched every one of the episodes, I follow it, I read the backstories, and I learned so much on storytelling out of Star Wars. So that would be my first deep brand love.
Oh, that's a good one, D.
Wow. Larry, your son, my nephew, is a big time Star Wars fan. And I have not become a Star Wars fan. I do remember 1977 when it dropped. But I will say this about Star Wars, and I think it's similar to the best marketing, Shakir and Larry. Layers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Layers. What one might go into it and think, this is interesting. I like the action in Star Wars. They just might like the fight scenes. That's it. Whereas someone else might go in and go, is there some family legacy happening here that might manifest itself at some other point in this movie or some other movie? It's like layers in this thing. Love Star Wars.
And
Yes.
guys, I'm gonna tell you this, and Larry, if your son is a fan of Star Wars, and if you haven't done it, have you guys visited the Galaxy's Edge at Disney in Florida?
No.
I have not. No.
Listen, as a marketer, not as a Star Wars
Right.
fan, as a marketer, I would highly recommend you guys to go and visit it. And here's the reason.
Okay.
So last year, I took my entire marketing team, all 300 of us, to Disney with this simple sort of realization. I'd taken my kids about a year back, and it hit me that people are standing in a queue for an hour, in some cases 2 hours. They go through the ride, and all of them are standing in the queue, no complaints, nobody's swearing, nobody's trying to push. They come out happy, excited, and some of them want to go back. And I told my team, like, I don't think there's anybody else who does such a great job in creating a brand experience as Disney does. As in they're really there, right? So we took our marketing team to Disney to learn about experiences, and we were fortunate enough to get a presentation from the Imagineer who designed Galaxy's Edge.
Wow.
So once you go there, like they told us that, for example, in the Star Wars world, everything is made out of sort of recycled stuff. Like it looks like somebody put an aluminum piece with something with plastic and create something, versus Star Trek is very uniform, right? Everything is super slick. They're two different worlds. When you go to Galaxy's Edge, and if you look out, you cannot see Disney. The way they've designed it, you look outside, you look up and you cannot see anything but that world, because you are in an immersive world. Most fans who go to Star Wars to the attraction are looking for the Millennium Falcon. And instead of putting it right in front, the moment you enter, you see a Millennium Falcon, you walk through and suddenly you discover Millennium Falcon. And it's a sight to see. The ride is fantastic. You can make your own lightsaber. You can make your own droid. As in, Disney has done a fantastic job on taking such an iconic brand and elevating that experience. Highly recommended.
Well, you know what's interesting, Shakir, again, as DC alluded to, our son Jake, who's a 21-year-old college student now. But when we went to Disney, so this is 15 years ago, when he was 5 and he was way into Star Wars then, they had a live experience. It was a show. And he literally, forget Disneyland, he could have spent the whole day watching that show like 20 times, And again, that's where you were going in 1977. Then when brands consume you like that, you just can't get enough.
Yeah, I'll say this, Larry, quickly before we go to the next question. And again, brand nerds, pay attention. Pay attention to what Brother Shakir is saying. When he talked about the Galaxy's Edge, he said the Millennium Falcon, one might think as soon as you come in, you'd see it. But they do it in such a fashion where you need to discover it. You walk, you meander, and then you go, here's the Millennium Falcon. And we we consumers find some joy out of discovering something rather than being put right in front of us. There's a double entendre here and corollary that Brother Shakir is bringing forward. In marketing, brand nerds, consumers are pretty smart. You don't have to put the thing right in front of them.
Yes.
You don't have to put your message right. It's in whatever content you do. It's second number 2. You don't have to bang. It's okay to romance the consumer and have them go on a journey to discover. But the way you do that is you have to earn the right to have a consumer want to travel the journey. If you've not earned the right, no one's standing in line for 2 hours. No, that's not happening.
Absolutely.
You earn the right, and then you romance them. You romance them. All right, Larry, next question, brother.
Yeah, and just to put a capper on that, that's where it goes to what you were talking about being emotive before, D.
Yes.
To be emotive and to be really connecting on that level, you have to be thinking of that all the time. And when you slap something in front of them that is just more logical, that's where they're more apt to tune you out. Okay, second question, Shakir. Who has had or is having the most influence on your career?
I've been fortunate enough to have many people like most of us, right? Uh, Starting from my mother, who was always very supportive on whatever I did, getting me to like move in many countries. My wife, obviously, that support system has been great. You can imagine as a spouse traveling with, for 2.5 years has been a blessing for me. Professionally, Coke has been wonderful place where there were many mentors who sort of helped groom me, develop me. Like any journey, the early part of the journey is very important because that shapes who you are and defines, what you end up becoming. When I moved to Malaysia, I was a very young brand manager. Actually, Daryl, working on Sprite, that was my first assignment in Malaysia. And the CMO at that time for Malaysia was a gentleman whose name was Darren Marshall. Darren is now the CEO of a company over here called Smith Tea Maker. And Darren sort of was an interesting balance of analytics and humanity, but he leaned more on analytics. And a lot of time marketing sort of doesn't move into analytics that much. And he sort of taught me, forced me, nudged me, did whatever he needed to do to bring the science of marketing into brand marketing. So I remember as a very young brand manager, we would get this data books, like huge books, which would carry all the data on the brand. And they were so heavy that, some of my female colleagues used to ask me like, once you're done, can you actually bring the book to our table because it's too heavy for us to lift? And we would have large scales and we would look at data and then plot that data and understand what was happening to sales, to velocity, to equity. I think at that time it was a pain to go through this, but 20 years later, it has become a muscle. Because it's like anything, right? The humanity part of it is what makes a brand differentiated from a product. But the science is what gives you an edge on understanding variables, on understanding what is going right and wrong. And in this world of increasingly high data and numbers, anybody who understands this has a massive competitive advantage. So I would call him out as someone who had a material impact on how my mind started to think differently around marketing. The other one is our current CMO, and not only because he's current CMO, but Manolo, he's a current CMO of the company. Manolo was, I interacted with Manolo 3 times in my career. I'm a bad penny in his life. I keep on emerging. And Manolo is, when I interacted with him, he was in a general management role. So he wasn't a marketer. He was the operating unit president looking after our ASEAN business unit. And I remember one day I was, as his marketing head, I was presenting a Coke campaign to him. And he looked at it and he said, yeah, this is really, really good. But he said, Shakir, it doesn't feel Coca-Cola.
Mm,
And this thing was going by. What the hell does this mean? Like,
mm,
doesn't feel Coca-Cola. And then for 2 hours, he took me through the values of the brand, the
mm,
spirit of the brand, the ethos of the brand. He said, listen, the storyboard is good, it's right in every way. You need the personality, the soul of the brand to come out.
mm,
And I was almost 10 years into Coke at that time. I'd done Coke in multiple markets. And at that moment, I realized, oh my goodness, I thought I understood the brand. But if I don't understand the soul of the brand, I don't understand anything. And Daryl, recall the meaning that you quoted in the Four Seasons was that the purpose of that meeting was precisely that, to understand the soul of Sprite.
mm,
Who can I go and understand the soul of Sprite? And he was so generous to take me through that. Uh, so with Manolo, I learned that, which has been an invaluable experience. As you know, as I now look at a massive portfolio of brands, each one of them have different souls. But if you don't get that right, we don't do good service to these beautiful brands that have been built by people like you, Daryl, in some cases, and some new
thank you.
brands that we are building for hopefully for the next 100 years.
Mm,
Yes.
mm,
D, you have any thoughts?
I do quickly. Interesting brand nerds that Shakir gave two examples. One of Darren about sort of bringing Shakir along the science path, injecting more science into marketing. And then he goes to Manolo, who then asks a question about the soul of the brand. It doesn't feel Coca-Cola is what he said, getting to the soul of the brand. That, brand nerds, is the art. That's this 2 hours that Shakir went to school with Manolo on the soul of the Coke brand. That's the art. So Larry and brand nerds, Shakir is talking about both the art and science of marketing, and I'm going to go to a connection to that. So brand nerds, when you are doing so, you're building a brand, crafting a brand, and there is a tactic at which you arrive. There will be one of three outcomes and one of three outcomes only with this tactic, whether it is a quantitative thing or a qualitative thing. Either this action is going to increase the equity, value, growth of the brand, or two, it's going to decline and decrease the equity, value of the brand, or it's going to be steady state. That's what's going to happen with every single touch point.
Mhm.
And your job, brand nerds, is to run yourself through both the art and science of marketing to determine how you increase the probability, small little things that you move to make certain that you can answer, yes, I can measure how this thing is increasing the equity of the brand, not decreasing the equity of the brand. Love that answer. Love it.
Yeah, it's great. And dare I say, DC, I would say there's only two. This is what bodybuilders say about building muscle. You're either building muscle, you're working and building muscle, or you're losing muscle. So I don't
Ah,
even
like
think
that.
there's a mid station in there, right?
Okay. I like that. That's good, Larry.
It's either building the brand or it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, what's really interesting, Shakir, when you use the example of not understanding the soul of Coca-Cola, DC and I have encountered so many people in our consulting practice who people say, they'll see an ad, I'm just not feeling it, and they stop there. They're just not feeling it, and that
Mm-hmm.
drives us crazy because they haven't done the right brief, they haven't done the right homework. What I'm struck with your example is I'm sorry, what's the gentleman's name, your CMO?
Manolo.
Manolo.
Okay. He said, I'm not feeling it, and then went wax poetic for an hour
Yes.
about why he wasn't feeling it because he understood what the brand was about, what the positioning of the brand, what the personality, all the very important things, as you alluded to, the soul of the brand, which will then get into why he's not feeling it. And brand nerds, this is for you. You must imbue what the personality is about and all the different facets of the architecture of the brand to ensure that people just don't say they're not feeling it. Because if you don't imbue that in it, then that's where people can go adrift. They might feel something, but it just doesn't feel like Coca-Cola because those important brand tenets are not part of what's happening in the creative.
All right, we're gonna hit the next question, but before we do, damn Shakir, you are this is phenomenal
Great.
already.
I appreciate
Has
it.
been
Thank you.
phenomenal. Brand nerds, the best marketers are elated when they are forced to engage in critical thinking. Critical thinking. And what Manolo and Shakir did, and Shakir and Darren did, is they were involved in bouts of critical thinking.
Yep.
And so brand nerds, we encourage you to embrace critical thinking and intellectual interrogation. Because I guarantee you, Shakir, as you were laying out this thing to Manolo, in your mind, you had it. I mean,
Yep.
he's the head of the entire area. He's the operating dude. You thought you didn't go in there going, you know what? I'm going to present this to Manolo. He's not going to like it. And he's going to spend 2 hours schooling me on the soul of the brand. You thought you had it. As a result of him doing what he did, he was in a dance of critical thinking and intellectual interrogation with you, and you did not get defensive. Your ears and heart opened, not closed. Super dope. Super dope.
And Darryl, it's in what I learned out of this, right? Obviously, I learned so much about Coca-Cola, but I learned, like to your example, like I get to see a lot of stuff, and I would kill myself if I was to give this feedback that I don't like it. That's useless feedback.
Totally.
And especially, and it's disrespectful as well, right? People have worked their heart and soul on it, but it is useless feedback versus providing exactly what that is, in some cases, follow up. So these things matter, especially to young people who are now coming in. They will, at some point in time, be leading people. Always use an opportunity to help people grow and understand, which is critical. The output of this was, these things pay dividend. And in this case, to Manolo. So, Larry, you mentioned that I was very fortunate to be part of a new country where the Coca-Cola company entered. And this was Myanmar. So Myanmar was opening up in 2012. And we wanted to be the first CPG to enter the country. Now imagine, you can visualize it's a high profile entry, right? It's the country's opening up. The world press is sort of looking into this. They're looking at how the country's going to transform. Coca-Cola is a very visible brand. And we had lots of points of views on, as we go into the country, what are we going to say? Like, what is our message? So I went to Yangon. There are no agencies. There are no research companies. Right. There's no data. There's nothing.
No IMC groups.
No IMC. Nothing at all. And what an amazing learning ground, right? So the only way to learn is the way human beings learn from each other, which is go and observe and talk to people. So I went into homes. I sat with people, I ate the food along with my team. So we did all of this and come back. And then obviously there's, as you can imagine, in a large organization, people have points of views on what we want to say. Our global campaign was open happiness at the time. And somebody had a point of view, well, what a great line. We are opening happiness. And when we understood from the Burmese people, it was very clear that line would have sounded very arrogant to people.
Right.
Here's a brand that's coming and say, well, you weren't happy before. Not true.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, they were okay.
Yeah.
They obviously are more optimistic today. And now we are going to do this. So because of Manolo's push to understand the brand, one of the things we did was we said, well, maybe go and understand when the Coca-Cola company went into different new markets, what did we say? Because we have almost 140 years of history preserved in our archives. So when we re-entered India, when the Berlin Wall fell, when we entered South Africa, when we first entered Mexico, like what were the messages?
Yeah.
And as we were digging into this, we said, well, you know what? Let's go and look at the first market where we entered, which was Atlanta.
Yeah.
And what was the message there?
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, we found out that in every single one of these markets where we entered, our core message was a promise of refreshing and upliftment.
Wow.
And actually, it was more defined as delicious and refreshing, which was literally the first poster, which was used in 1890 or 1894 in Atlanta. And so that was how the campaign was launched in Myanmar. So our marketing campaign in Myanmar in 2012 was a marketing campaign of Coke in 1890, literally.
That's really cool.
And that happened because one person decided to spend 2 hours of his time helping a young person be a little bit more wiser about the brand that he thought he knew a lot better.
Ooh, Dee, I have to jump in here. I love the fact that you talk about the soul of the brand. That's really the soul of the brand, right? The core of the brand.
Yeah.
And Shakir, we lament on this podcast a lot in that so often in the brand management system, when people circle onto different brands, that something could be working fantastically well, but somebody else, cycles onto the brand and they want to make their mark. And sometimes things just change because the new person wants to make their mark rather than what's really right for the brand. And for you to actually do your homework and go back to the soul in 1894 of what the brand is about says so much, because I think too often we as marketers move off of things that are working when in fact we should just go deeper into what is working rather than just do something different because it's different.
Absolutely right. And Dee knows this better because we went through the same journey recently on Sprite in the US. And
Yes.
we looked at this and said that the best time of Sprite was 1990, when this brilliant person decided to move the brand, that notion of Sprite from a product to a brand. And under this wonderful idea called Obey or Thirst. And what was wrong with this was a question. And we realized that for various reasons, as in somebody decided to change it. And without an iota of ego, we went back, understood as much as we can, including Daryl was so generous for spending his time with me. We said, let's bring it back because it works. And it's okay that my name is not going to be there. I proudly say that it was Daryl's word because it was, but it is the right thing to do for the brand and not for an individual.
And you know what? I can say it. It's going to be harder for him, but I was down the hall watching him do it in the mid '90s, Shakir, and what he did was incredible, and it does stand the test of time. And we've actually had some folks who are on the podcast who talked about moving away from Obey Your Thirst, and it goes back to what I was just talking about. We got to keep the S when something's working. It's sort of like in sports. When a play is working, let the other team stop it. Keep doing the same thing until somebody stops it. And, and invariably, if you build upon what's working and you're smart about it, you can actually strengthen everything.
Absolutely.
We're going to move on to the next question. I'm a little embarrassed right now, so let's just move on to the next question. Shakir, you have had an innumerable count of W's, wins throughout your career, and you've had them in different countries and different languages, at least 9 from where you lived. This question has nothing to do with those wins, though, Shakir. This has to do with your F-ups, the big, stinky, nasty F-up of your career, and what you, importantly, learned from it.
Yeah. So my concept first about Daryl is that if you don't have enough of those, there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not trying hard enough, and you
Yeah.
cannot be successful without that.
Mhm.
Second is we are all human, and we should not be shy about when we do this, because we are
Yeah.
bound to do this. We are designed as, you quoted the Liam Neeson movie. If you remember Steve Jobs, the movie, and
Yes.
in one of the last scene, the daughter, he's having a session with his daughter, and the daughter said that, "Why did you do what you did?" And he said, "I'm poorly made."
Yes, I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I'm
Great
poorly
line.
made. It's a brilliant line,
Yeah.
Aaron Sorkin. So it is this. I think so. Um of the many, and I'm going to pick examples which I'm going to attribute directly 100% to me, because there's certain things that I take accountability of as a leader. Everything my team does, I'm 100% accountable. But the ones that I learn the most from are the ones that I create.
Mm-hmm.
My own thing, 100% me. This is no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Malaysia in between 2003 to 2005. Sorry, 98 to 2000 and 2003. Malaysia is a Muslim country, and the Muslims celebrate the month of Ramadan, which is a month of fasting.
Mhm.
So going back to human behavior, 30 days of fasting, they don't eat or drink anything from sunrise to sunset. No water, no food, nothing goes. And at sunset, you can eat or drink anything you want. There's a ritual, which is Islamic ritual, to break or open your fast or start eating with a date, the fruit.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this brilliant idea that instead, because date is a fruit, why not make a date juice?
Mhm.
And I got our R&D team to work on it, and they created a really delicious product. We went out, we tested the product, and the consumers gave us 5 thumbs up, ready to go. And we thought we had a great idea to revolutionize Ramadan and be a more meaningful player in Ramadan.
Mm-hmm.
And we launched it, and it was an absolute bomb.
Mm.
And like, it was a very visible launch. Ramadan is a visible period. It is a high sales period as well. Both of you know our bottling partners rely on us a lot, not to mess up on any given.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a failure. It wasn't a light hit or a light miss. It was a big failure.
Mm-hmm.
What I missed totally was connecting the dots between what the consumers were telling us, giving us thumbs up on a product versus a ritualization.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And here was the misses, right? The first miss was there's a ritual of eating dates that goes almost 14, 20
Thousands of
years back,
years.
thousands of years back.
Yeah, yeah,
Since
thousands.
there was
Yes.
Ramadan.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. You
Yeah.
can't ritualize. Something cannot be ritualized. They just cannot be.
Mm-hmm.
What we got people to taste was a great tasting product. And yes, we never asked people, would you replace your date with this juice? Because if we would have asked that question, they would have said, no, we love it,
No.
but we will not do this. We
Right.
said, would you drink this? They say, yes. Would you drink a
Right.
lot of it? They said, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And one bad question or one miss of a question changed everything. Number two, because the product was launched in Ramadan, dates are only consumed during Ramadan. So we needed to have enough trial for people to buy it again, because nobody's going to buy a new product in a month, which is very ritualized. Because remember, I only have 3 hours or 4 hours to eat and drink. I'm
Right.
not going to experiment with a new product.
Right.
So we needed a trial to be brought in way in advance, at least 2 or 3 months in advance. The problem is nobody sort of regularly eats dates or drink date juice 3 to 4 months in advance of Ramadan.
Right.
So we failed over there as well. And the third big miss was that what do you do after Ramadan? So it's a
That's what I was gonna. That's what I was thinking. What? Yeah.
What the hell? So it
Yeah.
was a miss after miss after miss. And the big learning for me was go beyond the obvious questions on consumer testing, look at ritualizations and what creates ritualization. And the biggest aha was, to create a habit, you have to replace a habit. We already have all the habits built in, right? As in, We have 24 hours, we're doing something which is a habit. If you're creating a new habit, you have to take out an existing habit. That question or that idea would have made us ask this question. So your existing habit is a date. If I'm taking that date out and putting a juice, would you accept it? And they most likely would have said no, and we could have done that. So I learned a lot in the process with a very visible sort of product challenge. If your time permits, can I give you one more example, which was a
Please.
different lens? I joined China in 2013. So I'm moving from Thailand to China, a country I've never lived in. I've been to China a few times before that. And even before the day, like I was supposed to join, a week before I was supposed to start, our head of the water business called me up and said, we are launching this new mainstream water at a higher price point. It's slightly more premium water. It is a source water, so no differentiation. And we work with one of the biggest design consultancies on the planet. I'm not going to take a name because the idea is, as in, it's not about that company, it was us.
Right.
And the big idea is we're not going to put a brand on the package. Instead, we're going to have multiple designs of environment on the package. So there's a branding, but it's too small at the bottom. And this is disruptive thinking. This is new, all of this. Now, I looked at it and said, well, this doesn't make sense to me. My intuition says no.
Right.
But I say, well, this is one of the biggest design companies on the planet. My team is well regarded. They are Chinese. They have been on the roll for multiple years. It will be very arrogant for me to now come in and say, I'm going to pull the plug on this, and I know this better. So we let it go, and it expectedly didn't work. Because
Right.
consumers, the 5-second rule, people don't want to be confused at point of purchase. They want to pick up a brand quickly and move forward. They're not there to admire our packaging.
Right.
But here was the learning for me, which is I looked at this and the sales results were mixed. And I realized that based on the cycles, that if I didn't act now, which was 4 months into the launch, we would lose 1 full year later on. So I went to our bottling partners and said, listen, sorry, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Remember, for wins, there's a reason why win starts with a W, because every win has a V. But for mess ups, it's an I. It's accountability. So I went to the bottling partner and said, listen, I messed up, but I'm going to fix it. You're going to give me 2 months. I'm going to launch a new proposition right after Chinese New Year. And we're going to get this right, because again, we have learnings at our back. So we were able to convince, and our system said, our bottling partner said, you know what, give it a little bit more time. That's okay. We can be patient. I said, no, here's the data. Here's the data that is showing that the repeat purchase is not coming in. That is the most important sign that this product most likely will not last. And we have enough data for now 3 months that is showing us the future leaning sign that this is going to be a problem. My biggest learning was that, yes, you got to bring everyone's point of view. You got to learn. But experience creates a sixth sense that you should, on most days, not second guess. Low experience, low sixth sense, high experience, high sixth sense. And experience is winning and losing and spending time in meetings and conference rooms and launching stuff. All of this is experience. Sights and sounds of marketing is experience. We should not second guess that. That doesn't mean you should jump on the sixth sense, but you should not second guess your sixth sense. So since then, that was 2013, almost a decade later, every time my sixth sense says no, that doesn't mean I would say no to a decision, but I would go on a higher level of rigor on that decision.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Dee, should we go to the next question?
Let's do it, brother.
Shakir, those are 2 great examples. Thank you for sharing those. Those were great. Okay, so Shakir, when technology for us marketers has become so big, right? And so when you and your team we've noticed very closely that you and your team have really leaned into AI. So can you tell us where you think marketers should lean in or best leverage tech, or areas that you think they should be leery or simply avoid?
The lean in, Larry, from our side, and I'm in a deep learning mode right now because it's a new space, especially with AI and machine learning coming in. But the big lean in is around predictive decision making, number one. And what I mean by that is that today we have enough data that is actually available for free, and then the companies have data which is sales data and equity data. And this is my favorite example that I use all the time. That I know, for example, that I'm just making it up, that on Saturday it's going to rain in Atlanta. And we know when it rains, fewer people are out on the road, our out-of-home consumption goes a little bit down. And we have enough data that should give us predictability that if it's going to rain on a day, what are the sort of decisions that we can take to make sure that we continue to grow our business and deliver on our targets. Similarly, data on what drives brand. And I was sharing this example with Daryl on Coca-Cola. We recently brought in a team, which is a team of 10 PhDs. It's outside our company. To ask this one question, we gave them all our data and said that what attribute of Coca-Cola has the highest predictability for driving growth for Coca-Cola? And the data is allowing us to see through this. So predictive decision-making is clearly one where we are leaning hard, and we think it's going to save a lot of time of brand marketers to stop getting into hardcore data digging and use machine learning to look for predictive decisions. Eventually, you do need humans to make the decision, make the decision, learn, put it back in, right? So one big space. Second is we have been experimenting a lot with generative AI, especially on images. You guys would have seen this. We've been on the news recently on a Christmas ad that we made using artificial intelligence.
We've talked about it.
Oh, you did? Okay. And here's the context on this, because I read a lot of press that has come out, positive and negative. And I learned from people's point of view. Some people are anxious about it. Some people are worried about the craft. And it's good to learn these things. But here's a backstory behind this. The backstory was never to make an ad out of AI. That was not the brief that was written. The brief that was written was, we had a very good Christmas creative, not very good, but it wasn't great against the benchmarking that we had. So we worked with our AI team to say that, listen, we were looking at options. Should we create a new ad? Can we take one of the old ones and reuse it if it has not worn out? And right about that time, this opportunity came in with AI. So we said, well, let's use this very famous Coca-Cola ad called Holidays Are Coming, which has a very, very iconic soundtrack. Now, AI is still imperfect. So we said that, that ad is short and dark. It's a night scene. A lot of it is trucks. So it hides some of the imperfections of AI. And we said we're not going to lean into humans. We're going to use animals to create that emotion, the ethos that we talked about, and see what happens. So we developed the ad, and then we tested the same testing protocol that goes into every single ad that we air, and we don't air ads that don't pass our threshold. And this is one of the highest tested consumer ads. Now, separately, there's a company called Systems One that did their own testing, and they came with similar results as well. So our jury on this was consumer. We said, well, if it's right for consumer, we will do it. Right. And I was clear that if it's not going to work, we're not going to do it. We learn, and we learned a lot even in this process. Right. And therefore, we launched it. It's out in the market. Touch wood, from the mid-play results we are seeing is doing well. By February, we'll have the full results, so we'll learn more on this. But this was a good example that I think we're going to lean into technology to learn, experiment, to the earlier question on the misses, sometimes we will fail, but not moving forward is not an option.
Agreed. Agreed. Love that answer. This is great stuff. D, you want to go to the next question?
I do. It is a great answer. Shakir, what are you most proud of, brother?
Wow. I worry about the word proud. Pride goes before the fall. The word I would change is blessed.
Okay.
And question I would adjust a little bit with your permission is what I'm most blessed with.
Yes, please.
Go ahead with it.
Fundamentally, I'm most blessed with a great family. I cannot be more happier, more blessed, it's truly a blessing. I don't deserve them as great as they are. So blessing number one. Blessing number two is Coke has been a wonderful company for almost 30 years now. I've worked different places, different markets, and it's the people over here. And it's not only the people over here, but it's people out there, as in the two of you are Coke alumni. And this place is a wonderful, I don't know what the birthplace of great talent. It attracts good human beings and it keeps those good human beings. So blessed with the team that I work with, both the team that works in marketing, but the team around me in North America and just generally across. And there's a reason for 30 years, whilst many companies have knocked at different times, I was never tempted to leave, because how would I leave this great company because of the people? It's great to have the brands, as in I'm proud of the brands that we work with. But there's an adage, I think, that somebody has said, that you leave not your company, but you leave the boss you're working with, which is essentially you leave because of the people you're working with. And I've not left because none of the people ever gave me the reason to leave. So that's blessing number two. And blessing number three, guys, is that I'm a kid from Karachi. I don't even, you wouldn't even know, where it would be most likely. But the odds of me sitting in this office, in this room, speaking to great people like you, when I did my mental maths on this, and I recently had someone play an algorithm on this, it is less than 0.5%.
Yeah.
And, Warren Buffett has this beautiful concept called I think calls it the ovarian lottery, and sometimes calls it the genetic lottery or the ovarian lottery. And he talks about himself, and he says that just because I was born in the US as a male right after the Great Depression was ovarian lottery. And he said that if I was born in some other country with another sort of a genetic makeup, I would not have been that successful. So not winning the ovarian lottery and just being here, that's a blessing. This is not, I would not attribute to anything else but just blessings. So 3 blessings.
That's a mic drop, D. Those are awesome, don't you think?
They are. And Shakir, thank you. And we're going to modify that question from what are you most proud of to what are you most blessed with. So thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
That's really cool. All right, Shakir, we are moving to one of our last segments, and DC and Shakir, what's popping?
What's popping?
Shakir, this is our chance to shout out, shout down, or simply air something happening in and around marketing today that we think is good fodder for discussion. So, okay, Shakir and D, we've got something, Shakir, that I think you could really help us learn and help the brand nerds learn. So, in 2024, we're obviously starting here in 2025, but in 2024, we saw that at Coca-Cola Land, portfolio marketing is popping. So in 2024, Shakir, we noticed you bookended some goosebumpy, as you've used that term, emotion-based creative featuring multiple brands in the spots. So in January of 2024, Shakir and his team hired Chris Storer, the creator and main director of the FX hit series The Bear, and he directed a spot for Coca-Cola called The New Guy, which, by the way, brand nerds, if you haven't seen, we'll have it in the show notes. It's really a fun, great spot. It's a 90s, there's a 90-second version, there's a 30 as well, and it was made for the Emmy Awards. And then in Q4, Shakir, we also noticed that you ran a spot called Holiday Road. Again, that's different than the AI version. This is not the AI version. This is a different spot. So while The New Guy had Coca-Cola, Coke Zero, Diet Coke, Sprite, Smart Water, and Honest Juice, the Holiday Road spot had just Coke-based brands, at least as far as we could see, which was Coca-Cola, Coke Zero, and Diet Coke. So certainly each of these brands has its own brand positioning. So Shakir, today it is so difficult, as we all know as marketers, to grab consumer attention. And we're guessing you are doing what you did to engage people in something that doesn't feel like a traditional ad, where it is really genuine and, as we talked about earlier, more emotive. So for me, it feels like you've really accomplished this with those two different bookended spots. But at the same time, when you do have this portfolio brand approach, each brand is sharing attention and potential connection. So we would love to hear your thoughts regarding this portfolio approach. And also, what have you learned from this approach, and do you plan on employing this more in 2025?
That's a great question, Larry. So listen, the backdrop to that, to the work that we did in January was, it started with what's the problem we're trying to solve. The problem we were trying to solve was essentially an operational issue, which is we have about 15 active brands in our portfolio. We have more than 15 brands that we sell in the US, but 15 active brands that we advertise regularly. Now, giving them the right focus and push both at point of purchase on media is not possible. There's not enough time in a year to do that, to give them justice. So we said, can we approach this from a portfolio lens and see if we can succeed and if it could work? With a caveat that I had done this twice in my career and had failed. This was not an epic failure, but it was an utter, total disaster.
It wasn't the biggest F up, but it was a
It wasn't a biggest F up, but it was a F up. And so again, the advantage of failure is learning. So part of the pullback was, why did we fail, or why did I fail? And the failure was because we said that we're going to communicate to consumers that the Coca-Cola company has these brands. Consumers don't care the Coca-Cola company has these brands.
Right.
They want to drink a Powerade during or after sports, and a core power right after sports for muscle building and recovery, and a water for thirst quenching, so on and so forth. So that was a business issue. So we went into then from a consumer lens, and as we were mining not data but understanding human observation around that work, we realized that, and you guys will attest to this, if you invite some guests at your home, you would never have one beverage. Mm-hmm. You would have multiple beverages, right? All of us on any given day drink multiple beverages. I was drinking Sprite in honor of Daryl in my cup over here. I had a coffee in the morning. I had 2 Cokes. I had water. So that's our life. And so, well, yes, as a brand purist, I build brand, but the human consumption is around choices. But the idea is not choices. So what we strategized was this idea and said, well, we'll try and maybe we'll fail, but we will never know unless we try, which is stop communicating the portfolio as the portfolio of the Coca-Cola company and make our brands relevant with consumers. At a moment in time, which was January is very close to Super Bowl, and is it a moment where a game is being watched and and in that day or in that particular moment, they won't be drinking only Coke or a Sprite or a Powerade, they would have multiple beverages. That was a brief that was written. And because we were worried that it is going to become a Coke ad, I gave that project to the creative head who runs actually a juice business so that it doesn't become a Coke ad. And to Chris Storer, our request was that, because obviously he was working with the Coca-Cola company, if you don't show Coke because it's not the right thing to do, because it doesn't fit in the story, don't do that. We have to be brutally true to the human inside. So Chris did a wonderful job with that. We built that work, and we had it ready. Now, here's what we did on top of it, and you guys, being Coke alumni, would know that Coke does a lot of execution at point of purchase. So, for example, in gyms, we would we would have a poster of Powerade and Powerade available over there. At a Mexican eating place, we would have a taco with Coca-Cola. So we do these executions throughout the year. What we did with this campaign was we created 40,000 individual digital messages, 40,000.
Wow.
So a message would be this, that in a Mexican eating place, you get a taco with Fanta and with Topo Chico. Versus in a supermarket, you are in sports and you're buying a Core Power and a Powerade. Versus with the burger, you are getting a Coke and a Sprite, right? So 40,000 of these using machine learning on what is the right occasion and the right beverage. And using programmatic media, we delivered those messages exactly to the consumer who wants. So the Powerade message and the Core Power message went exactly to people who are working out or who care about their health, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the launch of the campaign that went out. We tested the ad as we did. The ad tested really well. We launched it. The execution went really well. Our equity numbers went up. Our share numbers went up. Our business grew. So we knew it worked. So the ethos then, and then there was internally we had a discussion on, well, are we going to move everything to portfolio? And the answer is no. Because remember, in that household, somebody who choicefully picked up a Diet Coke chose a Diet Coke because of the memory we created around Diet Coke with that individual. So throughout the year, we have to build brands, but we have to find opportunistic moments where we can leverage our portfolio because we have a wonderful portfolio that we can use. Hence, for homecoming or the holiday run, we only use Coca-Cola trademark brand. So it was Coke, Diet Coke, and Coke Zero because of the spirit of festivity. It didn't make sense to fit other brands in it. And what I can pre-tease you that we have a wonderful creative shot by another acclaimed director coming in January of 2025. So in a couple of days,
here first.
out to that. And it's based on the same learning. Because it worked, we want to continue doing it and do it better.
Really interesting. Brand nerds, you heard that here first.
Yes.
And given that this show is going to drop, is dropping in January, which you brand nerds are hearing now, Shakir, if you would like us, depending on when this drops, to put a link to that piece of content, if this all lines up, we're happy to do that.
I'll do that. I'll absolutely do that. It will be a pleasure.
Awesome.
Thank you. So your answer about this portfolio, great setup on the answer, LT, about portfolio. So brand nerds, it reminds me of something that Larry and I talk about in our practice, Shakir, is that there are 3 fundamental brand strategies for any company anywhere in the world. And the 3 fundamental strategies from a portfolio perspective are the following. You're either going to have an Uber brand strategy, an Uber brand with sub-brand strategy, or a solo brand strategy. Uber brand is Nike. Nike everything. Football, soccer, basketball, baseball, doesn't matter. It's all Nike, Nike, Nike. Their one exception is brand Jordan, but that is the exception. Everything else is Nike. Uber brand with sub-brands, that's Toyota. So you have the umbrella of the Toyota brand. Beneath it, you have these sub-brands that are all pulling equity from the Toyota brand. The Prius brand has a little elbow room to move so that they can show up to their consumers and customers different than the Tacoma brand, for example.
Yeah.
But they still are drawing from the umbrella brand called Toyota. And then the third one here is the solo brand. This is Procter & Gamble. They want Tide to be Tide, Gillette to be Gillette on its own. and they do not care if the consumer knows they all come from Procter & Gamble or not. They have no interest in that whatsoever. And so it's interesting to us that, Shakir, you all, and I will say we, because we are Coke alums,
Yes.
we grew up with mostly the solo brand piece
Right.
of this in the latter years. But you go back 100 years ago, and Coke was an Uber brand. It was Coke, that's it. Everything's Coke. Diet Coke, caffeine-free Coke. It was just Coke, Coke, Coke. So this is a fascinating thing that you're playing with now.
It is.
It is, and we're learning in the process, right? As in, I said the first year was good, was really good. We're now getting to the second year. The premise is this, right? I don't know, Daryl, I shared this with you or not.
Mm-hmm.
There's a quote from Churchill, which is on Russia. So I sort of adjusted that quote to talk about what is a brand. I always ask this question, also define a brand. And my definition of a brand is a promise wrapped in an experience inside a memory. A brand is a promise wrapped in an experience inside a memory. The Churchillian quote is, Russia is a riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma, just for reference.
So give me your twist on that again.
A brand is a promise wrapped in an experience inside a memory.
Got it.
And my push always is that the difference between a product and a brand is the memory. So for each one of the brand, as brand purists, we have to create these wonderful memories that trigger again and again, gets reminded. If there's no memory, then it's just a product. I don't have a memory of the tap water with which I brush my teeth with.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? No memory.
No memory. No.
I actually have a good memory of a Coke I shared with someone today in the office, because that was a memory, again, that reinforced a memory. So we got to continue doing this. But do we find great moments where those memories can be enhanced collectively with these beautiful brands? Is the experimentation that we are in right now.
And also, one quick capper on this. You're also taking what you said with the 40,000 iterations you have in the portfolio, and then you're taking it down into the micro of each brand.
Yes.
So you're
good, Larry.
Accomplishing both, which is really cool. All right, gents, we are close time. DC, I'm going to do very quick. Shakir, you've been amazing, better than we thought, and we thought you'd be amazing. So I'm going to do just some quick rapid fire ones. Brand nerds, like Shakir noticed when moving into a new country, how can you make sure you get a fresh lens that can help elevate your marketing? Number 2, observe and listen before doing. Number 3, lean into analytics and find your magic metrics that you can build upon, just like DC did back in his early days with Sprite, where his nugget was that there was a higher brand development index for Sprite in urban areas. Okay? And then the last one, I'm going to do this quick, is I love this, Shakir. Like Shakir does, your wins should have a we, your losses should have an I. Those are mine.
Larry, that is that phenomenal. Shakir, brother, that's a wrap. That's a wrap. You were phenomenal, man.
Yes.
You were absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so much, Shakir.
No, thank you for inviting me. It's what a pleasure to speak to both of you. Larry, I followed you briefly on Powerade. I would love to catch up on you, as in I am so enamored by people like you who have built these wonderful brands for us. Because brands
you're going to be sorry you said that. We would love to take you up on that, because I got a lot of thoughts.
Awesome.
Okay.
And we need some help over there, so that'd be great.
That's a great wrap. Brand nerds, thanks for listening to Brands, Beats, and Bites. The executive producers are Jeff Shirley, Daryl DC Cobbin, Larry Taman, Haley Cobbin, Jade Tate, and Tom DiOro.
Pod Baba.
Yes, and if you do like this podcast, please subscribe and share. And for those on Apple Podcasts, if you are so inclined, we love those excellent reviews. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we look forward to next time, where we will have more insightful and enlightening talk about marketing.